Hi everyone, Daljeet Peterson here from astrolab21.com. And in this video, we're going to be talking about Taurus season 2021. So our astrological new year is already going by pretty quickly. We're already moving into the second phase of this new year that began at the beginning of last month as the sun moved into Aries on the spring equinox and initiated this new solar year, new astrological year that we're in. Because, of course, astrology follows the seasonal cycle, right? We always begin our new year on the spring equinox when the sun moves into 0 degrees Aries. So we looked at what we could expect from last month, this month that we just finished, as the sun moved through Aries. And now we're going to look at what we can expect as the sun makes its month-long journey through the sign of Taurus. And, of course, we can already talk about that shift, you know, in terms of the seasonal cycle. And if you've been following along in the Blueprint of the Soul series that I've been producing, where we're doing this sort of astrology 101. So if you're someone out there who's interested in learning astrology from the ground up and getting a real foundational education in astrology, I highly recommend you checking out that video series. I'll put a link to it in the description below, and we'll pop it up here on the screen for you too, because we're really getting to understand to speak this language of astrology. And if you follow along that series, you'll get a lot more out of these monthly videos, these monthly forecasts, because you'll really understand the language and the terminology and the concepts that really are the foundations of astrology as a practice, as an art, as a science. So really happy with how that series has progressed, and yeah, check it out if you've got time. So we're going to pivot. We're going to take a look at the charts, and we'll look through the month ahead and see what we can expect from the transits that are going to show up. We've got a big month. We've got 3 planets that are changing sign over the course of the next 4 weeks. So we'll be looking for those energy shifts that are going to take place and how we might align our personal energy with all of these configurations that are happening in the sky, and look for what we can expect in ourselves, in our relationships, and what's probably going to show up in the world at large, and hopefully align our energy with these transits and with these energy patterns, so that we can be prepared for what's coming and maximize the opportunities. That's what we always want to try to do. That's how we want to use astrology as a tool. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a look at the chart here. And already got it up for April 19th, 2021 on Monday at about 1:30 p.m. here Pacific Standard Time. The sun will ingress, or move into, as we say, the sign of Taurus, right? And if I were to back up a month, you know, it was a month ago on March 20th on the spring equinox when the sun moved into 0 degrees of Aries, and that started our new solar year. And we'll be tracking a year as, you know, the sun moves once, about a degree a day, right? So 30 days in each of the 12 signs gives us roughly our solar year. So now, you know, after a month journey through Aries and the beginning of Aries season, initiating a new season and a new year with all that Aries, you know, cardinal fire energy that we've been experiencing, now we're ready for a shift, a phase shift, as the sun moves into fixed earth Taurus, right? Now we're coming into phase 2 of spring, phase 2 of 3, and the peak of spring, really. What we're going to get in Taurus is the full bloom of spring. Its most powerful essence, right? Whenever we are in the fixed sign of any season, it tends to be the most powerful, the peak of that season. And Taurus certainly is the peak of spring for us every year. Things are just in full bloom, right? I've got some citrus trees here in the backyard, and man, they are flowering, they are fragrant. It is just really delicious, right? There's buds on the trees. You know, spring is happening. The birds are humming and nest building, and it's, you know, it's a really wonderful, exciting time of the year, right? And Taurus really invites us to enjoy and get involved, and you know, it's all about the senses and sensuality, right? As an earth sign, and as a fixed earth sign. That's what Taurus really represents, and being ruled by Venus. And as we're going to see, Venus is in Taurus right now. So there's this real call and urge and desire for sensual expression. And there's going to be a lot of that this month. We're going to see there's going to be a full moon in Scorpio. So that Taurus-Scorpio axis always is an axis of sensuality and sexuality. So lots of stimulation here as we consider this month. So one of the things we're going to see right away when the sun does move into Taurus, it's going to be an exact conjunction with Mercury, which also will be a moving into Taurus. They've kind of been in lockstep. You know, if we look at the few days as prior to, as we move from the energy of Aries and into this energy of Taurus, these two planets are kind of moving together, and they reach sort of exact conjunction on the 19th, just as the sun enters into Taurus. So what do we get when we get these two symbols of the sun and Mercury conjoined, right? We get, very powerful self-expression, right? The sun is the self. It is our identity. And when we get Mercury combined with that, it gets a lot of, mental stimulation to our sense of self, our sense of identity. We're going to have very strong ideas, very strong opinions often. We can get a little opinionated. We have to be careful with our words because we can maybe express our opinions a little too strongly with this configuration. Certainly the tone changes, though, as it moves from Aries. The days leading up to it, when those two planets are in Aries, are even more volatile. Now we're getting maybe a little softening of the tone, right? The language becomes a little more sensual, a little more Tauran, a little more Venusian, right? We want to talk and start to think about more sensual things, the body, relationships, values, right? This whole month, the theme of Taurus is all about values, right? We think of Taurus as the sign that rules money and possessions and resources, right? It's all of those, and being ruled by Venus, which is a planet that really is about values, what we hold dear, what we desire, what we want to bring to ourselves, what we attract, what we're attracted to, that process. It's a very Venusian, very Taurus quality. So at the very beginning of the month, we're going to have this mental stimulation from this Mercury-Sun conjunction that's really going to invite us to, think about what we value, think about what we want to possess, think about our money situation, right? Because I'm going to bring Venus in here as well, because Venus is also in Taurus. It moved in back on the 14th of April. So this is another, prelude to the month, right? With Venus moving into Taurus as the same time as the sun, we're getting a really nice Venusian quality, a very heavier emphasis on this Taurus energy, with Venus in her own sign being very comfortable and very expressive, and really sort of putting an extra emphasis on this Taurus energy, this sensuality, this notion of relating. And when I think about Taurus, I always think about relationship to self, right? Taurus and Venus is, Venus is all about relating and listening, right? But when I associate Venus with Taurus, it's listening to yourself, your own inner dialogue, where when I think about Venus as the ruler of Libra, it's like listening and relating to the other. So this is a time of the month, certainly with these three planetary configurations, a good time to really become more aware and in tune of our inner dialogue, right? We all have that relationship to self. We're all talking to ourselves all day long, right? It's this conversation, this voice in our head, right? This ego dialogue. So, and a chance to really just sort of ground that process, that thought process, Mercury, and really consider, how we think about our value system, how we think about what we're trying to attract in our lives. A lot of emphasis on resources and money during this month, right? Because, and we're going to see another planetary configuration here when we bring up we'll bring up Uranus, which is also in Taurus, and something that we've been talking about as well, I'll just bring it up right now just so we have it, right? Because Uranus is also in Taurus, and it's making its 7-year journey through the sign. It entered Taurus back in 2018. And one of the big themes for the entire year of 2021, as we bring up Saturn here in Aquarius, this Saturn square Uranus is a dance between these two heavyweights that's going to happen throughout the entirety of the year 2021. And we'll talk about this in every monthly season, but of course this month, in Taurus month, this configuration is going to get some emphasis. It's going to get a lot of attention because now we have, 3 other planets coming through Taurus and joining the Uranus party, if you will, and sort of weighting that side of this very important aspect, this square that's going on between Uranus and Saturn throughout the whole year. So this Taurus versus Aquarius configuration is really going to be emphasized during the course of this month, especially as all 3 of these planets, one by one, will come in and form a conjunction with Uranus throughout the course of this month. And each time it's going to trigger that Uranian impulse. When we think about what Uranus represents, it is all about very sudden disruptive energy. It's electric. It's the lightning bolt, right? It's our inner genius. It's the download of ideas, right, from the cosmic mind, from the super intelligence. It's where we get much of our inspiration. It's a very, Richard Tarnas calls it the Promethean urge, right? It represents that urge for liberation, to decondition, as Jeff Green called it, freedom from the known. Uranus wants to free us from all of the inhibitions and the limits that Saturn puts on us through its role as the sort of boundary maker, the limiter, the lawmaker, the rules of society within which we have to navigate and negotiate our lives. Well, that can come into conflict with our own process of individuation, our own desires. Maybe conflicting with the rules of our family or our peer group or the society within which we live. And this square is sort of a real theme for this entire year. We're all having to negotiate this rather difficult challenge, like especially coming out of this year we've had, right? How are we managing this new society, right? Which Aquarius is the symbol of the new, and we've been talking about how Saturn and Jupiter had that great conjunction in Aquarius back at the winter solstice at the end of 2020 and triggered this new 200-year cycle, this air cycle we're moving into. And Aquarius is sort of, I should say Saturn is begrudgingly taking on these Aquarian themes. It's saying, okay, I'll change the structure, but I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it slowly. I'm going to do it with resistance. I'm going to cling on to all the traditional values I can, and I'm going to only change what's absolutely necessary. While Uranus over here is going, no, let's just do it quickly and suddenly. So we can expect some very sudden disruptions to occur over the course of this month within regard to the finances and within regard to the Earth itself, right? If we think about Taurus fixed Earth, and we've been talking about this a lot over the course of the last year, Uranus in Taurus is a symbol for disruptions in the Earth, earthquakes, volcanoes, seismic activity, right? And we're seeing it. This volcano that's erupting in the Caribbean just past week, right? This is a classic Uranus and Taurus type of energy. I think we're going to expect a really active hurricane season this year. We could see more earthquakes, more volcanoes, more sudden volatile energy as Uranus tries to shake up literally the Earth in Taurus. But also it's going to shake up our finances, our resources. I've been talking about, I did a whole video on Uranus and Taurus, and I'll put a link to that in the description and pop it up here for you too, in case you want to check that out, because it's a really good deep dive into this theme that we're exploring over this entire 7-year period. And really, I called it a revolution in what we value, right? Uranus is the planet of revolution, moving through the sign of values, the sign of money, the sign of possessions. So lots of disruptions, most likely over the course of this year, by virtue of this square, right? In stock market, in monetary policy, banking. I think we're going to see, the stimulus negotiations that are going on, what's going on in Congress, this infrastructure bill and all the negotiations going on around that. Money issues, we're talking about trillions of dollars now. I think we're talking about cryptocurrency. We're talking about Bitcoin going through the roof. All of these things are going to come to a head. We're going to, throughout the course of this year and into 2022, right? Some new monetary system is trying to emerge through this configuration. So be aware of that, and also, be really mindful of your own personal resources, your own personal finances, because we're going to be called over the course of this month to revalue our own value system, our possessions. Taurus is all about possessions. Taurus loves to be surrounded by its beautiful, lovely, aesthetically pleasing Venusian things, right? We all love our stuff, right? And I'm always reminded of that, famous George Carlin riff on stuff. We gotta, you're gonna need more places for your stuff, right? And this whole idea of being possessed by your possessions, right? And I talked about this in my monthly newsletter that you can subscribe to at astrolab21.com. This is something that is the downside of Taurus, and what we want to be conscious of during this month, right? Where are we being possessed by our possessions? Where are we maybe over leveraged? Are we in too deep in our mortgage? Did we lease that luxury car that is probably more car than we need, right? Are we maxing out our credit cards so that we can have the latest iPhone or the newest tech gadget or whatever, or the hottest fashion of the season? We're going to have that impulse to spend and to luxuriate, to surround ourselves with these resources, particularly with Venus moving through the sign, right? And now the Sun and Mercury, all of this really Tauran, Venusian, sensual energy. We are going to want to luxuriate. We are going to want to pamper ourselves, and rightly so. But I think we also want to consider, I recommend Marie Kondoing your life, right? Consider all of your possessions and only really retain those things that really spark joy. And if they don't spark joy, resell them, donate them, recycle them, gift them, let that energy circulate so that you have more energy coming in. So that's a major theme for the entirety of the month, and certainly as we begin this month, as we see with the Sun, Mercury, and Venus all in conjunction and all moving towards getting pulled into this energy of Uranus that's really anchoring this entire year and this square pattern with Saturn. And so, I'm just going to look for these things to be playing out in the world at large as well. So, going to move forward a couple of days, and I'm going to bring in Mars, because Mars has been, it's interesting, over the course of the last few months, all the planets have been sort of clustered together in only one half of the sky, just one hemisphere, if you will. And it's Mars who's sort of led the way and broken out from the pack. And for the last 4 to 6 weeks, I think Mars has been moving through Gemini. And it's been really initiating. Wherever Mars is, we have this sort of energy for initiation. It's the doer, it's the can-do, get-her-done planet of our zodiac and of our personal archetypes, right? So wherever Mars is in our birth charts is where we have a lot of strength and courage and effort and endurance and ability to desire, to execute the desires of the sun and the soul. And of course, wherever it is in transit, this is where there's a lot of energy. So we've had this Gemini mental energy with Mars over the past few weeks. But as we move into the middle of the first week here of Taurus season on, let's see, it looks like the 23rd, we're going to see that Mars is moving into the sign of Cancer. So it's leaving Gemini and moving into Cancer. And this is an interesting one of those energies. As I said, there's 3 planets that are changing signs over the course of the month. Mars moving from Gemini to Cancer is a pretty big one because Cancer is considered the sign of Mars's fall, which means it's one of the places of all the 12 signs of the zodiac, Mars is least comfortable in Cancer. Why is that? Well, Cancer's a water sign. Cancer's a feminine sign, right? Cancer wants to pull everything in. It wants to slow it down. It wants to conserve. It wants to be protective, right? It's very suspicious and cautious, right? Totally contradicts the energy of Mars that just wants to go after it and get out there and do, right? So what we may experience here is this shift in energy from the mental, the intellectual, to the emotional, to the feeling nature, right? And we may get a sense of there could be some emotional frustration as Mars makes its move into Cancer. And for the next, 6 weeks or so as it moves through the sign, there's going to get, just expect to be a little more emotionally focused and inwardly focused, and just be alert to maybe a little of emotional frustration could come up, right? In yourself, look out for it in your close relationships, your partners, your friends, your family, your colleagues and co-workers. Just something to be aware of as this month progresses with this configuration. The next thing we want to look at is that the very next day, on the 24th, we're going to have Venus and Mercury are kind of come into an exact square with Saturn over here. Right? So as we talked about, this is triggering all of this square energy between Uranus and Saturn, and now we get Venus and Mercury coming into really the exact square. So what does this mean? So with Venus and Mercury working together, right, we've got the mental aspect and the feeling aspect really united in a very powerful way, and united in the sign of Taurus in this very sensual, earthy, practical way. Our minds and our feelings are united. We're, the sensing and the feeling and the emotion and the intellect and the thoughts and the ideas and the communication, right? Our words and our ideas are getting a softening. This is really a nice expression. We should have a lot of creativity, a lot of very artistic expression you could expect with this configuration. Like our voices literally will have a more resonant tone. You think of Taurus that rules the throat, rules singing. You may have just want to be singing out loud, right? Venus and Mercury combined in the sign of Taurus. But they're being squared here by our old friend Saturn, right? The old limiter, the old taskmaster, who's just calling us to take these ideas, take these feelings, and somehow make them useful, make them practical, put that idea, put that feeling, put that artistic energy to good use in a Saturnian way. It may limit our expression, right? The square can, these configurations work both ways, all right? Are we going to try to use this wonderful Taurus energy and express it in a new, creative, or socially oriented way with this Aquarius energy that Saturn is wearing and putting on and experimenting with and trying to build structure in? Or are we going to let Saturn limit our expression, our artistic feelings, and our beautiful ideas and thoughts and words? This is where we're playing with these archetypes, and we have a choice. This is free will choice. This is where astrology gives us great guidance, and this can work in either direction. I'm always going to advocate for putting it to the best use. The awareness, the consciousness of these things arms us with the tools, the techniques, the ability, the awareness, and the focus on how to use our energy and move our energy in ways that are in congruence with the symbols and the planetary configurations. So, that's going to be an interesting day. And that's kind of the first week of Taurus season. Now, we'll move ahead to the 26th. And on the 26th of April, we are going to get the full moon in Scorpio. And this is going to be a pretty intense full moon. I mean, Scorpio energy, so Scorpio full moons are always intense. Scorpio is the most intense sign of the zodiac. We all know that by now. And so this full moon every year, and particularly as we can see with all of this Taurus energy around the sun, in almost exact, or coming into its exact conjunction with Uranus, again, highlighting this Taurus side of the square between Saturn, a really intense full moon, very energetic. If we consider this Taurus-Scorpio axis that's being highlighted here, we think a lot about sexuality with this axis, right? Because Taurus rules the physical side of sex, right? That reproductive survival instinct, right? The survival of the species depends on us reproducing sexually. So Taurus is that physical, almost biological urge for sexual expression. Whereas Scorpio represents the watery emotional side of sex, right? It's that emotional connection, that bonding to the partner, to the other, that deep desire to merge and mesh with the other. That's Scorpio energy. So with this full moon, expect a real increase in probably your sexual energy during that time. So good time to plan a romantic date, or you may have a lot of strong urges to express yourself, and that sexual energy, that kundalini energy is going to be really on the rise in the days around this full moon on the 26th. And if I pull in Jupiter here, also moving through Aquarius, we can see that there's this grand trine taking place on that full moon with the moon in Scorpio, and we've got Jupiter over here in Aquarius and the moon in Cancer, right? So this is a really nice energy on top of this full moon energy, particularly where we're seeing this connection with Mars, and we've been having it here with Mars-Jupiter, right? That's a really powerful trine energy. When you get the energy of Mars connected with the power and expansion of Jupiter, a lot can be done with that energy. It's a very buoyant, supportive, really expressive type of energy and configuration. So that's something that around on April 26th should be a pretty powerful full moon with all of these factors combined, right? You can see Mercury and Mercury and Venus in that conjunction, along with the Sun almost coming into that, within a few days of being exact with Uranus. So I expect this to be a pretty powerful lunation. From there, I want to move on to, I'm gonna bring Pluto into the picture here, because a few days after the full moon, or actually the next day, Pluto is going to start its retrograde period, and it's going to spend from now until October 26th. Pluto is going to start retrograding, so it's going to go from this 26-degree point all the way back to 24 degrees. And this is interesting because this Pluto and these degrees of Pluto, I think 24 degrees is exactly where it was at the outbreak of the pandemic back in the spring of 2020. There's going to be a lot of information, I think, that may come out about this whole experience we've gone through. And we're going to get a time to really reflect on it in a new way as Pluto makes this retrograde for really most of the rest of the calendar year of 2021, all the way through the end of October. It's going to be moving backwards. We're going to be in review of these very deep transformational shifts that we've experienced over the course of this year that have been pretty profound. And Pluto is really calling us, as it always does. Wherever Pluto is, it's this strong, deep, unconscious, powerful urge for transformation. Pluto wants to transform whatever it comes into contact with that is no longer serving the highest purpose. And so with Pluto's transit through Capricorn over these last 12 years or so, it's really been focusing on the entire structure of society. Our whole idea of a structure of a hierarchy, which is very Capricorn, has come under incredible stress. So all of the stresses that all of our systems have undergone over the last year, our financial system, our educational system, our political system, there'll be a lot of review of a sort of a situational assessment, if you will, of what's gone on. So just look for that to start as that it's a very powerful point whenever these planets, especially Pluto, stations direct and starts that retrograde motion. It's like it's literally sort of sitting still in the sky for us from our perspective here on Earth. And that grinding to a halt and changing direction tends to really emphasize whatever archetypal theme that planet is bringing up for us in society and culture. And Pluto is definitely one of these transpersonal big picture planets. So these Plutonian issues may come up for us once again. We might have to revisit some of the difficulties and challenges and a sort of purging of a lot of that pain, that suffering, that trauma that we all experienced together in this last year. So just something to keep our eye on. I'm going to move a few days forward now, move to April 30th. And here is when we're going to get the sun coming into this exact conjunction with Uranus, which, again, I feel like this is the days right before and after this is really going to shine a light, right? The sun, wherever it is, it's like shining its light, a spotlight on this very powerful configuration of Uranus and Taurus in square to Saturn over here in Aquarius. So could expect, again, for yourself, your own, some disruption in your own routine, your personal resources or finances. Could be a disruptive time in the stock markets, the financial markets in general. Some weird, crazy thing happening in crypto. That kind of thing that happened with GameStop last month. It's all part of this configuration, and I think we're going to see a lot of these just sort of sudden disruptions coming about. So this may be a day during this course of this month where something like that may take place. Next thing I want to look at, I'm going to move forward to, as we move into May, the first week of May, on the 2nd, we're going to see that Mercury is going to come into a trine aspect with that Pluto that's now moving retrograde, right? So this, as we said, this Plutonic energy that's now shifting back, and we might be in replay mode. We're going to revise and re-examine some of the things we've gone through. Well, now we've got Mercury in Taurus, which is giving us voice, giving mental and intellectual energy towards that endeavor, right, in this trining way. And again, so perhaps during this first week of May, some new information, right, Mercury comes out about Taurus, about some of the values that we've had to endure during this Pluto in Capricorn structural transformation that we're witnessing on. Really, it's worldwide, it's civilization-wide, what we're going through right now. And so could expect something, and Venus is there too, but this exact trine here with Mercury, I would expect some news, things in the news, in the media, around some of these big structural issues that we're going through in society. Just wanted to put that on your radar. Next, we'll go to May 3rd, and this is interesting because you have the moon in exact conjunction with Saturn, and the Sun in a pretty tight conjunction with Uranus. So here we have the two luminaries, and this is in that last quarter square of the lunation cycle, joining in this square energy with Saturn and Uranus. So kind of an interesting sort of alignment there with the lights, the luminaries, the Sun and the Moon squaring off and really highlighting this square aspect. So we'll be pulled in some emotional way with the Moon towards the old patterns, right? The tradition that Saturn is desperately trying to cling on to, while moving through the sign of future-oriented Aquarius that wants to create a sort of new vision of society that's trying to emerge at this time. And that sort of push-pull tension of Saturn moving through that sign, I think we're all experiencing. Like, we don't want to let go of the past. I think many of us are like, oh, I can't wait to get back to normal, right? And then there's also the sense that there is no back to normal. It's going to be a new normal. And something deep within us, I think, is acknowledging that it's time to move on. It's time for something new. So consider that, on May 3rd, that could be an interesting day where those two energies are really highlighted, with the Sun and the Moon joining in that square aspect and just really putting an emphasis on this theme, this really general theme that we're all working throughout the entirety of the year. Okay, so then we're going to move the next day on the 4th. We're going to see that Gemini is going to be changing signs, moving out of Taurus and into its own sign of Gemini, or I should say Mercury moving signs, right? So this will be a nice energy shift in our thinking, our mental patterns, our thought patterns, our ideas are going to get a boost, right? We're going to move from this sort of sensual, physical, creative, artistic way of expressing into a much more intellectual, communicative, expressive modality. You're going to really we're going to all get a little more chatty for the next few weeks until Mercury will eventually retrograde during Gemini season, but we'll talk about that next month. But as we start here, as we get into our, sort of the third week here of the month, this Mercury energy starts to shift for us. Our communication is we're just going to be much more verbal, much more expressive. We're going to be wanting to writing. Our journaling will probably get a lot more intense and more voluminous. Like, we're just going to have a lot more expression with that energy. So yeah, all right. And then this week is really big. Everything's happening in a few consecutive days here, because what we get on the 5th of May is the exact trine. So now we get Venus contacting this retrograde Pluto. So where we had the ideas in Gemini with Mercury contacting Pluto, now Venus contacts Pluto. So now we get a more deeper sense, feeling tone to this Plutonian urge that we've all been collectively experiencing, right? A valuation, a deep appreciation for what it is we value in society, right? And again, with Venus and Taurus, we're really getting this earthy, practical resources of senses of what we really hold dear and value. And how does that fit into this bigger picture of what's changing for us on the big world stage, as we're all trying to figure out what's next and how we all move forward as individuals and as a society into this new era that we're all collectively birthing together. So expect something, and we can get some sudden and eruptive changes in our emotions, in our feeling nature, in our relationships, right? Because Venus does rule relationships, and the relationship to self, the relationship to other, the relationship to the planet, to the environment, to the earth. What is are we being conscious of our impact, our carbon footprint, right? All these kinds of things we'll have a better way of seeing how we all personally fit into this bigger picture of what's changing within the very structure of society with this Pluto and Capricorn signature. And as we go retrograde and start to review what really has gone on for us in the past year. So that's another day. This whole week seems to be aligned in a very powerful way. And then we'll move forward here on the 9th of May. We'll see that Venus is going to change signs, right? So it's going to move out of its home of Taurus and it's going to move into Gemini. So now our very feeling nature is getting a more intellectual boost, right? We're going to want to be more expressive and communicative, Gemini, of our feeling nature, of Venus. We're going to want to attract people and ideas that resonate with how we think, with our mental, our communication, our interpersonal aspects. We're just going to get a boost. And this is whenever these planets change signs, it's this subtle energy shift, right? So all of that Venusian sensuality that we've been experiencing for the last month, it's going to shift a little bit. And we're going to value intellect and ideas and exchange of information a little bit more. So with both Mercury and Venus now moving through Gemini for the next month into Gemini season, and we'll talk about that, right? That's that energy shift where we're going to go from a fixed modality of Taurus, we're going to go to a mutable sign of Gemini, and we're going to want to disseminate. We're going to definitely have an urge to be more social, and it feels like everything's moving that way. Hopefully this retrograde Pluto won't put the brakes on the opening of society that we're all so chomping at the bit to experience. Who knows? We'll stay tuned for that. That could be what's going on with that Pluto retrograde. So something to pay attention to. But in an optimistic sense, in a better world, we're moving in where the energy is starting to mutate and we're getting a chance to communicate, to express, to share ideas and have conversations, hopefully in the real world and not just virtually by Zoom or Google Chats or all that stuff. So, and then, the last thing I want to talk about is, as we are talking about Gemini here, I'm going to bring up the nodal axis. And as we've had the North Node is in Gemini, South Node is in Sagittarius. This is another year-long, 18-month transit. But Mercury is going to come into conjunction with that North Node in Gemini around May 9th. This will be interesting. I always think about this axis as like a compass, right? It's like, where are we coming from and where are we going? The past, the South Node, the future, the North Node. So we've been sort of meditating on the past, our old philosophies, our old way of thinking, which is Sagittarius, right? And trying to formulate a new idea about where we're headed, right? Gemini, North Node in Gemini. So with this Mercury conjunction of the North Node, I expect a lot of inspiration and ideas about new ways of being, new ways of thinking, new ways of communicating. I think something new in the communications technology industry could be announced or released, or some breakthroughs, but also just on a personal note, how we communicate, right? How, and we're all talking about that. How do we communicate? How do we educate? How do we do business in this new and changing environment where we're mediated a lot more by digital communications technology? Just something to be aware of. I think this will be an interesting conjunction during this, early part of May, and this Gemini energy as the sun's moving through Taurus, and sort of a preview of what we're going to get with Gemini season. But that'll be an interesting configuration and a conjunction to look at, and just a chance for all of us to sort of check in with our own personal compass. Where are we coming from? Where are we going? And this, we're going to get into eclipse season next month in Gemini as well, right? Anytime the sun comes into conjunction with the nodal axis, that's when eclipses occur. So as a sort of prelude to what's coming next month, be a good time to prepare. Start to even make a list So this is a list configuration of where am I going? What are my ideas for the future? It's a very future-oriented idea ideation configuration. Would be a great day to make a list of your plans for the next year. Where are you going? Where are you headed? What ideas do you have for your future? That configuration certainly supports that. If we move ahead 2 more days, on May 11th, we're going to get a new moon. The new moon in Taurus over at around 21 degrees or so. And then that new moon will also be in trine to that Pluto in Capricorn, that Pluto retrograde. So another triggering of this Plutonian vibe. So lots of review. Once that Pluto goes retrograde and all these planets are triggering it in this trine aspect, hopefully it's a kinder, gentler way of reviewing from a little bit of a distance what we've gone through and processing it. I don't think a lot of us have had time to process some of the trauma. Some of us have lost loved ones or people close to us who have suffered illness and setback, lost work, or are struggling with our finances, right? Hopefully we get a little chance for a sense of renewal, of a revaluation, right? A new moon in Taurus, and a time of renewal, restart, refreshing, recalibrating with this new moon in Taurus, and really just getting deep into what it is, what's important, what's valuable. That's what Taurus energy is all about. Value. What's of real value? So it could be a good new moon for that. Just a couple more things to look at here as we wrap up. Let's see, the 14th. So 3 days later there, we're going to see that Jupiter is moving into the sign of Pisces. Pretty interesting, because since that great conjunction last December when Saturn and Jupiter were conjoined at 0 degrees Aquarius, we had the great conjunction that was such a popular topic, and I did a video on that too. I'll send a reference and a link to that below, and we'll give a link up above, because that's a good one to review. It sets a tone for it's a 20-year period that was inaugurated with that conjunction. But now, over the course of just these first 6 months of the year, Jupiter has been just hauling ass really through Aquarius and moving quite quickly. It's separating from its conjunction. We see how these two planets move. That's like Saturn moves much slower. So while Jupiter sped through, Saturn's only about halfway through the sign, while Jupiter has already gone all the way through Aquarius and is dipping its toes, if you will, into Pisces. And this will be a big one, because I feel like, what we've witnessed with that Jupiter move through Aquarius, I really correlate that with the rollout of the vaccines. It can be directly related to this, right? So it's like, what do you get with Aquarius? You get the scientific, right? And with Jupiter, you get big, expansive energy, right? I think about the notion of big pharma. Jupiter in Aquarius, big pharma, right? And that's who's responsible for delivering us all these various vaccines. And in an unprecedented fashion, right? Quicker and using a brand new technology, Aquarius, and with a lot of urgency and a lot of, very quickly. So now that Jupiter is going to move into Pisces for just a few weeks, actually, before it goes retrograde, and it's going to back up, we're going to feel some very big shift, a shift from a focus on the scientific, right? Where we have a trust the science, which is a great, I don't have any issue with that. And I think that's what we're getting with Jupiter and Aquarius, like trust the science. This is a new era. This is where we have to go. There's going to be a very palpable shift into a more emotional sensing with this move, I think, in Jupiter. There's going to be a gear shift. Again, just like Mars going from that very active, airy Gemini and slowing down into the watery sign of Cancer. Same with Jupiter. Moving from Aquarius, air, right, social. Now it's going to move into that watery Pisces And Pisces invites us to look at not just society, but just the biggest of all frames, like the oceanic, how we're all connected, right? And I think we're going to start to look at those who maybe have left behind, right? Because in Aquarius, it's all about who's getting the vaccine first, and there's a lot of that already. Like some of the disadvantaged, some countries haven't gotten it at all yet, right? And so there's going to be this conversation shift for these few days, and a perspective shift as we consider the frame of Jupiter and Pisces. And I'll probably do a whole video on that upcoming, because that's going to be a theme for 2021 and into 2022, where Jupiter, I think the Jupiter transit, December 2021, it will move forward again and move into Pisces for another year. So just look at around here mid-May, there's going to be a shift, and it's going to be very short-lived, because Jupiter's going to go to about, I think, 2 degrees of Pisces, and then it's going to start its retrograde on June 20th. So right at the beginning of Cancer season, right on the summer solstice, actually, Jupiter will stand still and start its retrograde, and we'll move back through, looks like, to the 22nd degree of Aquarius. So a lot of this will be reviewed. And again, if we're associating this Jupiter and Aquarius with the vaccine and the science of everything and trying to get ahead of it, trying to solve all these big technical and social scientific challenges, there may be some review of that too, some backing up. Maybe we have to reformulate the vaccine to accommodate for new strains that are showing up. Maybe there's some issues that need to be readdressed and reassessed. So there's always that period of retrograding where we have to go back over those same degrees that we went so courageously through, review, revise, and some changes before it'll move forward again and then move on into Pisces as we get into 2022. So that's a big point to a point of emphasis that I think is worth paying attention to there around mid-May. Last thing is, on the 16th, we will see that the sun itself, as it's going in through its last degrees of Taurus, will then form its own trine exactly with this Pluto retrograde signature. So a third, we had Venus and Mercury both make that trine aspect earlier in the month. Now the sun comes along and says, okay, it's really shining a light on what are you asking for, Pluto, right? What are your demands? What are the issues you're trying to show us? And I will shine my light on it from this Taurus perspective, from values, from resources. What resources do we need to really affect the big systemic societal changes that you see as necessary? What needs to evolve? What needs to change in our structure in Capricorn moving forward? And this is also goes all the way down to the personal level. What are our own personal structures that we've had to revise over the course of this last year that maybe no longer serve us, that in the old system we're not going to carry them forth into the new era, the new paradigm that's being really birthed at this time. And again, like I said in that video on the 2020 conjunction, it's really what we're at the cusp of. We're at the very forefront of something very new. We are in this gestation period, right? We're in the womb and we're descending in the birth canal. We're being reborn as individuals, as a collective, as a civilization, really. I really believe that, we're in the midst of a history-shifting epic. And it's the dawn of the Aquarian age. We've been hearing about it for so long. We heard about it in the 60s. Carl Jung was talking about it as early as the 1930s and 40s. So it's here. We're in it. Whether the exact day or not, we're amidst the age of Aquarius in this aeonic shift. A good place to end here as we consider that Sun trine Pluto at the end of Taurus season. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I think that's quite a bit to digest. Hopefully having a look at the charts helps you sort of see what we're talking about, work with these symbols. Again, if you're interested in astrology, check out the Blueprint of the Soul series. I'm really proud of what we've done so far. I think I've got 7 episodes, probably 2 or 3 more, and we'll really have all the foundations, and we'll start really utilizing these tools to analyze charts and really learn how to become the architects of our own destiny by learning to read the blueprint of our soul. So lots going on here at the channel. I'm really excited, glad to be sharing all of this information. Hope you're enjoying it, getting something out of it. As always, if you are, please click the like and subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. Notification bell so you'll know when I release new episodes in the Blueprint series, when I do more of the monthly charts and other transits and important events that are coming up that have astrological significance. Hopefully I'll have time to do a lot more of these videos. I've also launched a Patreon page, so there's links to that in the description below. If you're really getting value out of this channel and would like to support my efforts at transitioning to a full-time astrologer, which is my vision for 2021, I would love it if you would support me. There's some for as low as $1 a month. You can start becoming a patron of Astrolab 21 and of the work here I'm doing on the channel. So excited about that and everything to come. So hopefully you have a great Taurus season 2021. I wish everyone the best. Enjoy it. Get out there. Enjoy the spring air, the peak of spring, and hopefully you'll have a chance to really check in with your own values and to really maximize your resources this month. All right, until next time, Sat Nam, everyone.